And welcome everyone, we should be live. I'm just gonna give it a minute until I see that you guys are indeed in the chat. If you're completely new to me and you don't know what you've clicked on, this is a live streamed walk of Chiswick in West London. So it is live. You might be watching it live with us now, or you might be watching it on replay in the next few weeks or months or years. Nice shot, thank you. Cool, I'm guessing you can hear and see me properly. Before anything else, a lot of you know the drill already. We're gonna have to test the microphone. So what I'll do is I'll be tapping the microphone 3 times. You need to let me know in the chat if you've heard that properly. Right, you should have heard a tapping. Because if not, it could be a little disconnection with all my cables and my little plugs in and stuff. Because I don't want you to hear any wind noises. It's quite windy today. Oops, sorry. You've heard it perfect. Cool, perfect, thank you guys. So we've got about 9 minutes before to go. We're just waiting for everyone to connect. Welcome Marilyn, welcome Lynn. And hello again to everyone that I've greeted in the chat already. Hi Linda, nice to see you here. How was your cruise? So we've got, let me tell you precisely, 8 minutes before we start. So if any of you are watching the replay in the next few weeks or months, if you wanted to skip the next 8 minutes, you could go straight into the live walking tour. Hi Marianne, welcome. Thank you. And if any of you were completely new to me and we don't know what's happening, so this is a live stream walk where we'll have a little walk around Chiswick and I'll tell you about stuff that interests me. It might be true crime, it might be local history, or it might be whatever happens in the chat. If you're watching the replay and at any point I say something a bit weird, it might be me reacting to something in the chat. If you're watching the replay, you've got the option, well, at least on a computer, you've got the option to check the chat. It should be somewhere underneath there. You don't have to have the chat open, of course, but it's just if you're wondering what I'm talking about. Where is my shirt from? It's from Zara. Is it? Yeah, I think it's from Zara. Yeah. The cruise was marvelous, perfect, and delicious food. What river did you cruise? Or what sea did you cruise? What did you cruise? See, Zara, my sister knows better than I do. It would be very nice if I didn't have a button popping out on the first wash. So now I've got different buttons. Hi Sandy, nice to see you here. And welcome everyone that just joined. We still have a couple of minutes, I think. 6 minutes to be precise, before it's officially time to start. Just so you know, for the first few minutes of the tour, I'm not going to be too loud in terms of my voice, because there's a lady down there that, a local resident, I mean, she does not like the sound of my voice. That's probably why she bought a property next to a cemetery, because the dead are not very noisy. But every time I do a tour here, she's knocking at the door, she's shouting at me. When I'm only staying here for a few minutes, and you know, it's a Sunday, 7 p.m., who am I waking up? She's probably going to be in a very bad mood today, because there was a big Asian wedding just an hour ago on the street with like lovely music. I liked it, but a lot of Asian wedding music, so she probably was not impressed. A couple of hours between Long Island and Connecticut, or Connecticut, as you might say. For sunset, lovely. That sounds nice. Yeah, or earplugs or something. It always amazes me when people, I mean, we are in London, you know, if you cannot stand people talking on the pavement, you might want to move into the countryside, maybe. And those, I mean, that property is probably like 12 mil. So, I mean, you know, people would have the money to go a bit further out of town. It's a Linda Fest indeed. Nice to see you, Linda. And welcome everyone else that just joined. Another thing for people that might be here for the very first time watching the replay, sometimes we have some micro little cuts in the signal. So if you're watching the replay, they'll be cut out, so sometimes it could sound a little bit funny. So just so you know, if that happens, it's not me doing a very weird edit, cutting the sentence. It's because we are live, and with the live streams, anything can happen, including signal drops. Although we should be good today. There's just one spot where sometimes it happens for a minute. Everything else, we should have a decent signal. Although we never know. Oh, thank you, Marianne. It's probably not just my voice. I mean, there's literally a sign on the railings. I can't show you because last time I showed you the sign she banged on the door, but it says silence, please. So I think it's everybody's voice that she dislikes. Hi, Mark. Behave yourself in the chat, Mark. Final Conjuring, September 5th. Are you gonna go and see it, Natasha? I've had a lot of talks about exorcism last summer with a priest. Well, not a lot of talk, but a dinner talk with a priest about exorcism. That was very interesting because he was a priest from Africa, so in the European Catholics, they probably don't do as many, but in Africa they did. Good boy, Mark, because I've had a complaint. It's not actually the best stop for me to see the chat because of the white on my shirt. I should go like this, it's easier. Hold on. Today is the day they discovered Marianne bodies. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's this time of the year. I'll be going back to where she's buried next week. I've lost a friend through a very horrible tumor. Anyway, the funeral it's in the cemetery where Marianne Nichols is buried. So I'll probably revisit her grave quickly. Insect spray. Not that I know of, Nikki, but what, did you hear about stuff like that? You love The Conjuring as well. I don't think I've seen any of the Conjuring movies, actually. Maybe I have. Can't remember. It's okay, Nikki, it's okay. It's probably the type of cancer. That's better when it's quick, you know, because otherwise you're just stuck in bed for many months, unable to do anything. So, you know. Anyway, is it time to go? Yes, it is officially time to go. So welcome, guys. Welcome to Chiswick Old Cemetery. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Natalie, and we'll go for a little live walk in the area. Let me flip this camera around and let's go without further ado. So I am in Chiswick Old Cemetery, which is a cemetery. So it's a large commercial burial ground, but it's quite interesting because it's literally next to a graveyard. And so for those of you that don't know, there's a slight difference between a cemetery and a graveyard. If you see down this side, it's hard to see on camera, but there's a little railing there. After that, it's the graveyard of St. Nicholas Church. So the graveyards, they were those little burial grounds around the church, you know, like your local parish church. Very often the graveyards, they're actually a bit older because a lot of them got saturated, mainly in the 19th century. And so this on this side here, it's the graveyard. So yeah, the graveyards, they're usually around the church that is a place of regular Sunday worship. When the cemeteries, they were purposely built burial ground. They often have a chapel as well for the funerals, but it's not like a normal every day or every Sunday chapel for normal service. Yeah, there's a little distinction. Well, at least in the UK, you might not have a distinction in America, but yeah. So this is the little graveyard of St. Nicholas Church. We'll come back down this way in a moment, but for now, let me show you the little street. I'm gonna be fairly quiet down here because this is the local resident that doesn't like loud talking. Or talking at all, because I'm not even loud. So Chiswick, it's an amazing, it feels like a village. It is not, it's very much part of London, but it's, well, we are 6 miles from Charing Cross, to give you an idea. But it does really have a little village feel. And those buildings here are 2 former pubs. Some of the oldest buildings in this area. So this is the old Burlington. It's from the 15th century. It used to be a pub. I think it closed in the 1920s. This is where it is said that Dick Turpin, the famous highwayman, had his wedding breakfast. Now it's a private property. And there's another little former pub around here. The little pinkish building that used to be another pub called the Lamb. It closed, I think this one is 1909 when it closed. It was part of the Fuller's Brewery. Let me show you. All those, a lot of the building around here were part of it's still open actually, the Fuller's Brewery. So the pub was supplied by the Fuller's beer. And in that very pub, the Lamb, in 1888, well, actually, it might have been very beginning, January 1889, they had the inquest into the death of a young man that was sadly found floating down the river around here, John Montague Druitt. I'm sure some of you have heard of him because he was a Jack the Ripper suspect. But I'll tell you a bit more about Druitt. Oh, the wedding is still on. So that's the spot where I wanted to tell you about Druitt. Anyway, we're gonna be in the middle of an Asian wedding. But for now, let's go back into the graveyard. So this is St. Nicholas Church. Lovely little church. It's been here for a very long time, actually. Most of what we see today, it's Victorian. apart from the church, the tower is much older, but they've redone a lot of it in Victorian times. And actually, when they did the refurbishment in Victorian times, they found a little crypt that they didn't know was there. And in the crypt, they found a very interesting coffin. It was very weirdly shaped. It was like a little coffin. Hello, we've got a little friend down here. Oh no. Wait.
Come here, silly.
Bye. You don't like cameras? He doesn't like cameras. Anyway, so yeah, they found a little coffin that had a little. Well, it was weirdly shaped. It was very small, but not small like a kid's coffin. It looked like it was missing a head, and there was there was a very famous body that was missing a head, Oliver Cromwell. You might remember we talked about that in one of my tours. You know, when we went to Holborn, I probably told you the 300 years story of Oliver Cromwell's head. For those of you that don't know who Oliver Cromwell was, he was the Lord Protector of England. He's basically the guy that signed the death warrant of the king, you know, Charles I. And he died and he was buried in Westminster Abbey like a king. And when Charles II came back to the throne, he was not impressed. So he had Cromwell taken from his grave. Oh, thanks ever so much, Natasha. That's very much appreciated. Every tip really helps supporting me. Thank you. So yeah, his body was taken out of the ground. And then he was executed anyway. He was already dead, but he was hanged, drawn and quartered. His head, well, we know exactly what happened to his head, but that's a long story for another day. His body, we don't know where it was placed. And some believe that it might have been buried here, because two of Oliver Cromwell's daughters are allegedly buried here. So who knows, you know, maybe. Now let me show you my favorite grave in here. This is, we don't know much about him. I heard someone say, well, a lady I met in the cemetery months and months ago, she said it belonged to a stonemason. So that's how he could have the money for such, or the labor time, or for such a very expensive mason work. The skull, they were quite popular in the 18th century, and even before that, at the time of the Catholics and stuff, they often represent they used to remind you that you'd be judged, that you'll go through the purgatory and stuff. But it continued after that, even with the Protestant. We often call it memento mori. So when you see a skull in a cemetery, in an old graveyard, it's not because they were pirates or witches or whatever. It's a reminder that it's a reminder of your own mortality. Now let me show you potentially the most famous person buried here. There are a few more. There was one of the mistresses of Charles II buried here. There are a few notable people that I don't know anything about, but this one I do know. It is, of course, William Hogarth. Hogarth, he had a summer home around here, which is interesting to have a summer home 6 miles away from your winter home. Hogarth is known for being a chronicler of his time. He was, of course, a great painter, but really, it's not his paintings that were the best. It's his chronicles of the 18th century, really. He was a great he was great at depicting local scenes and stuff like that. You might remember we talked about him when we talked about Beer Lane on Gin Alley. Who needs a reminder of their own mortality in a graveyard? Well, exactly, Nikki. If there's one place where you don't forget it, it's in a graveyard. But yeah. And the so yeah, Hogarth is also known for the copyright laws, because what happened is he published something called the Harlot Progress. At the time in the 18th century, they started to have some form of curiosity about sex workers and how they ended up having the life they did. So he published a series of engravings of how it happened to a young girl, and he only published about 1,000 to all his subscribers, but very quickly they were all copied, and he was infuriated by all those people making money out of the copies of his own work. Let me remove the picture. So he actually complained to Parliament, and that's how Parliament introduced the copyright laws. They were actually called the Engraving Act, but everyone referred to it as the Hogarth laws. So that was the early form of copyrights. Now, some of you might remember the first time I did a live around here, years ago now, I was completely flooded. And I was literally stepping, like the water was almost to my knee. Well, let me show you a little plaque. Apparently, it's not that rare. It happens quite a lot. Sometimes I'm surprised that those houses on Chiswick Mall, they cost millions of pounds, and yet they are very often flooded. Now, I don't want to be filming anyone right into their faces. I wanted to go down that way actually, but there we go. That's it looks like a wedding ceremony to me. I could be completely wrong actually, but yeah. Let's try to go down the river anyway. I'll see if right. So let me just show you the river. Actually, the proximity of the river makes me wonder whether it is indeed a wedding or... Is it a wedding you're celebrating, guys? No, she's in the... Oh, okay. She's in the river, you did? No, it's in the... Oh, okay, okay. Right, so this is the spot where Montague Druitt was found. So that was 31st of December 1888 when his body was found floating away in the river. Right, I'm gonna try to get out of here. I don't want to be putting anyone on camera, so I do apologize. I'm just gonna show you my face because I don't want to be filming people without their consent. But it's a lovely little celebration. There we go. Right. Yeah, I'm not too sure if I'm not too sure. I don't think it was actually ashes in the river. I think he said no, so it's probably just the Diwali festival. But it's quite cool. Anyway, back to Druitt. He was a young man. He worked as a lawyer. Although he had studied a little bit of medicine at some point. that's interesting because of stuff that were said later on. And apologies, I don't know why we're talking about Facebook. I've missed something in the chat, but I'm guessing someone lost their account on Facebook. Sorry about that. Yeah, anyway, so Druitt, he was of course a Jack the Ripper suspect. I have to say he was not my favorite one, but who knows? He's a decent one. Some people at the time were absolutely convinced that he was Jack the Ripper. How is it, Nikki? I don't know. Right, little pause in our story. This home, Said's house, it was rented by the BBC to film some of the first season of the Apprentice. You know, the show, the UK version, because I think there's a US version as well. £5,000 a week. And apparently the contestant and the production team, they managed to do £12,000 of damage inside. Red wine on the carpet, and they had a barbecue inside as well. So yeah, £12,000 it cost, according to the landlord at least. Anyway, back to Druitt. So those houses, by the way, you've got the amazing building as well as the garden on the other side of the street. So that's interesting. You have to cross the street to enjoy your front yard. Again, those gardens, they fairly often get flooded. It's quite often occurring around here. And welcome Diane, and welcome everyone that just joined. Lovely view. You had a bit of, yeah, you can see people sailing. I think they had a little race earlier. We'll see the sailboat school in a moment. Right, back to Druitt. So he was a young lawyer. His body was found in the river. Fairly obviously, he unalived himself. He had some rocks in his pocket to make him a little bit heavier, because he was actually a good swimmer. He had a letter in his pocket that stated, "I was worried I might end up like Mummy." His mother suffered from mental health issues, and she was actually taken into an asylum around here, the Manor House lunatic asylum. She wasn't there at the time when he came. We don't know why he came all the way down here. There was a train ticket in his pocket from Blackheath to Hammersmith, because he lived in Blackheath, so southeast London. Did he come down here to maybe check himself into an asylum? And maybe did he lose his nerve, and maybe did he decide? He had a lot of money in his pocket as well. He had just been fired, sadly, from a teaching job in Blackheath. We don't know why. A lot of ripologists, so the ripologists, they are the specialists of Jack the Ripper. A lot of them have suspected that he potentially had some kind of an affair with a student, a young male student. There was a school for boys in Blackheath, but we don't know. That's only speculations. So he had a check in his pocket. He actually had quite a lot of money in his pockets. At the moment the tide is in, see the little island in the middle? It's called the Nate. It spells Ayot, but we pronounce it 8. When the tide is out, you can walk on the 8. You can cross over. The tides, they're quite impressive in London. So at the moment the tide is in. If you see the little, excuse my finger, but if you see this, that's for the boat, so they know how to go around the 8, you know, and not get stranded in the mud. And also, if you happen to be on the 8, it's a little nature reserve at the moment, but if you're just there chilling and looking at nature, you see when the pillar starts to get wet, you should consider crossing over, because otherwise you might get stranded on the 8. Now, back to Druitt. Let me show you. We see another bit of the brewery here, the Fuller's Brewery. Still very much active today. I think they do some visits actually. I should go one day. So, Druitt was. He definitely took his own life. That's for sure. But why, we don't know. He had lost his job, but he had another job as a lawyer, and he was, the week before, he had won a case, so he wasn't, even if his mental health was maybe a bit troubled, he was still able to function, you know, because he was still able to work on stuff. Now it turned out that a lot of people from his own family suspected him of being Jack the Ripper. Oh, thank you very much, Nikki. That's greatly appreciated. Some ripologists even argue that at the beginning of the century, in Edwardian time, everyone believed it was Druitt. Everyone believed that the case had been closed. There was even an MP in West Dorset, where the Druitt family was from, that stated that Jack the Ripper was a young doctor that had been found drowned in the river. He wasn't a doctor, but they might have been trying to confuse people because they probably didn't want to shame the Druitt family, because it was a very famous family. His uncle, I think he was Robert Druitt, he was a famous doctor, and everyone would have known about his uncle because he believed that alcohol in small quantities that would be good for your health. People still believe that today. You know, the wine industry in France is always paying doctors to pretend that a glass of red wine a day is good for your health. At the time, Druitt was convinced that alcohol could be good for your health. So he would be hired by a lot of alcohol brands for commercials in the newspaper. So a lot of people knew the name of Robert Druitt. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened, but if Montague Druitt was stopped on the streets of Whitechapel with something a little bit suspicious, you know, maybe a bit bloody or maybe just looking a bit suspicious, maybe he could have got off by just saying he was Druitt. That was such a famous name. I'm not saying it happened, but they would have been like, okay, Druitt is from the family of a doctor, he's he's so respectable. It's not the type that would do such atrocities, you know. He's a good suspect because, yes, he did take his own life soon after the last murder. Well, the last of the canonical five, soon after Mary Jane Kelly's murder. That was not the last one of the Whitechapel murders, but that's a different story. And the argument, some say that he lost his mind, and his uncle Robert Druitt was actually very much against prostitutes. He actually had wrote a book called The Surgeon Bible, where he blamed the prostitute for every single sexually transmitted disease. Of course, it's always the lady's fault, right? Never the customer's fault. And Druitt might have actually been the other way around. There are some evidence that he had given some money to charity, one of which in Whitechapel. So this is a bit far-fetched, but some ripologists even believe that Druitt might have been Jack the Ripper and he might have been an activist. Now, bear with me on that one. I know it's weird, but some people would argue that those 5 ladies, they were already condemned. They were already ruined by their condition in society. You know, they were on the streets. They were alcoholic. They were selling their bodies to survive. One of them had syphilis. One of them had tuberculosis. So some believe that Jack the Ripper might have actually been an activist that wanted to highlight the extreme poverty of Whitechapel. Now, I know it sounds a bit weird, it's a bit far-fetched, but if really that was the point, that worked. That worked very well indeed. Because, you know, why did Jack the Ripper go back to the same area? I mean, Whitechapel would have been full of police, full of the Whitechapel Vigilante Committee, full of even journalists, and, you know, why would he go back there? He could go anywhere else. He could have been to any other slum, like St. Giles, or where the police presence wouldn't be the same. Or he could have been to any posh areas as well, you know. The sex workers, even the posh one, it's sad to say, but they are easy targets, you know, because of the nature of the job, because they often go into a secluded area or an isolated room for the job, you know, with a stranger. So why did Jack the Ripper keep? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Is this live?
Yeah.
Where are you live streaming this onto?
On YouTube.
On YouTube?
Yeah.
Can I just really quickly, I don't mean to take too much of your time, I know you're
Yeah.
Can I suggest a website I found recently called City Explorer?
Okay.
Should I write it down somewhere for you?
City Explorer.
City Explorer. It's literally a place you can live stream things like this.
Okay.
Exactly as you're doing. Walking around, speaking about the culture, stories about the place.
Okay.
I think you'd really like it.
Okay. Do you work for them?
No, but I'm sort of related to it in a.
Okay, I'll look it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect.
City Explorer. Thank you.
City Explorer.
Cool. A young man recommending a platform for streaming. So yeah, those ladies. You know, why did Jack the Ripper go back to that area that was particularly full of police? Some ripologists would say simply because he lived there and he worked there and it was on his way to work. But yeah, it is an argument. There is an argument to be made. Sorry.
Can I get your YouTube channel?
Sure. I used to stream with a platform that did exactly that through COVID, but they went down. They were called Heygo. That's me.
Heygo.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Okay.
Fine. Right. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, it is an interesting point. I personally, I don't. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that is the case, but you know, it is possible. Then, of course, why did he come here and take his own life? There is a possibility that he suffered from mental health issues. All his family knew about that. And there is a possibility that he just wanted to come and check himself into a hospital, a mental health institution, and that he changed his mind because the police was kind of closing in on those asylums, because the police officers by that point were convinced that Jack the Ripper might be in one of them. So yeah, we just don't know. There's a lot we don't know about Druitt. But there's even one ripologist that claims that Druitt might have been sent into an asylum in France, in Paris. I'm not really sure what their sources are for that. I think there was one article somewhere at the time. So that Druitt might have been taken into an asylum in France, and then he confessed of being the Ripper. And sadly for him, that young nurse, she spoke English and she understood him, so he was kicked out. But there's hardly any evidence that this is true. Really, it's only speculations. There's hardly anything against Druitt apart from those claims. So the MP in West Dorset, as well as McNaughton, he was the CID of the police at the time. He wrote a text in which he stated three main suspects, and he believed that Druitt was the most plausible one. But, you know, the police didn't really have much against him at the time either. And some even speculated that he had a cousin that was a Church of England priest. And some said that Druitt might have confessed to his cousin, and that the cousin, of course, couldn't break the confession, but he did not want anyone else to be accused of the crimes and hang when he knew they would be innocent, because Druitt, his cousin, would have done it. So that maybe he's the one that told some people, including the MP, and maybe that the police knew as well, but they couldn't do much about it because Druitt was dead anyway. Who knows? You know, it's still a mystery. He's a good suspect, but there are many good suspects. Anyway, let me show you this building, Walpole House. It is known after, I think it's the nephew of Robert Walpole, our first Prime Minister. Now, on this site, it's not the actual building, but on this site, there used to be a lady living here called Barbara Villiers. She was thanks, Mark, but not everyone can. Let's not put pressure on people. So yeah, Villiers, same name as George Villiers. You might have heard of George Villiers, the first Duke of Buckingham. He was the lover of James I, so same family. Barbara was really well, Natasha will talk about that in my Jack the Ripper tour. If I need to reschedule it one day soon. So yeah, Villiers. So Barbara, she was one of the many mistresses of Charles II. She bore 5 of his children. She was actually with him before he married Catherine of Braganza, his actual wife. Villiers, she died here. When she was young, she was super pretty and she was very salacious. She was allegedly having, well, we don't know if that's true, but she was criticized in the press for having group sex and stuff like that. She was also accusing, whenever she was pregnant, she would always say that it was Charles's kids. Charles admitted 5 of them, but there's one, Charles Fitzroy. Even Charles himself is not sure it is his kid. When you see anyone called Fitzroy, it's very often bastards, what they would have called bastards at the time, illegitimates of the king. Fitz, that's Latin for son, like in French, fils. And Roy, it's, well, Spanish, Latin, but king. So son of a king. So anyone called Fitzroy. Thank you, Diane. Thanks everyone for your tips. That's very much appreciated. So yeah, Barbara, we might talk about her in a little while again. She died here. She's buried in the cemetery or in the graveyard where we were earlier. When she died, she was actually obese, and she died out of dropsy, water kept in the body. And she became a bit of a recluse towards the end of her life. Now, let me show you a lovely letterbox here that has something wrong. What's wrong with the letterbox? I'm sure some of you noticed something unusual. It's missing something, isn't it? They might have had a door replacement because we've got no royal cipher. Usually around here, or it could be on the other side, but you'd have the little cipher, the monarch's initials. This one doesn't have any, so they probably had a door replacement at some point. Now, let me show you another building that has another typically Georgian detail. Let me show you. So, up there, I'll zoom in a bit, but it's not going to be very clear. You might see those 2 little plaques. Those are insurance plaques. Let me show you one so you can see a bit better. So this is the Sun Insurance. So those plaques were mainly in the 18th and beginning of the 19th century. They were insurance plaque. So the fire brigade at the time, they were actually the taxi boat. They worked straight for the insurance companies. So if your house was on fire, they'll come and check if you have a little plaque. If you've got no plaque, they'll watch it burn. And if you had a plaque, what they'll do is they'll help extinguish the fire, and they would hire some local member of the community, and they'll pay them with beer voucher. So they could go down to the pub with their beer token to pay them for the job. And that was until the Great Fire of Southwark, when after that we started to have a public fire brigade. Anyway, I'm gonna try not to say anything of great interest in the next minute and a half, because sometimes down here there's a little spot where the signal drops down. So let's just chit chat until the little cafe down there. Mark is saying, oh, what's the infamous anagram, Mark? I don't know about the Fitzroy anagram. Tell me in the chat, unless it's very rude. But yeah. Yeah, well, the sun, you know what, Nikki, the sun, it's actually still running. Now it's the sun on something, but it's the longest running insurance company in the world, I think. Look at those amazing villas. Some of them, I think it's Walpole House that sold for 18 millions. So that's... I don't know why those properties are so expensive, because it's lovely around here, but just behind it you've got the Hammersmith flyover. It's a huge road. Laurie is asking if I've got any trips scheduled. Yeah, I'm going to Kosovo and North Macedonia in October. I won't be doing any lives because I don't think I can buy internet. I mean, I'm only staying a couple of days in each location, and I have no idea how much a SIM card would be. So I'll be doing videos. And so, yeah. And in November, I've got to go back to Hungary. I'm just going to the dentist. So I'll probably do a tour there about the worst murderesses of Hungary, because they had a few horrible female killers down there. So yeah, that's something to look forward to. Is the signal still with us? Have we had any little drop so far? Or not at all? There's a lovely little Italian cafe down here. They've got the best display outside. It's a Cinquecento car with, they usually have their carrots or their products in the front. Oh, is it too rude, Mark? Okay, fair enough. Look at this. Isn't it cute? So it's a lovely little independent cafe with Italian food, and so that's part of their display. No drop. Okay, perfect. That's cool. Lucky one today, because sometimes we have. Okay, now let me show you an amazing stink pipe. Some of you might remember this tall, excuse my finger, but this tall thing. It is a stink pipe, because back in Victorian times, of course, with the, you know, when you had the sewer, they create a bit of methane, you know. The dentist there is very good. Yeah, it's much cheaper than it is in the UK, and I've got no complaints so far. And they do my annual check for free, so I've got the free X-ray and stuff. So even though I have to pay for a flight ticket, I only paid £26. I didn't buy the return yet, because I don't know. I might try to go to Slovenia as well or something on the way back. But yeah, it's with the flight ticket, it's still cheaper than doing it in the UK. Anyway. Those stink pipes, they were because of the poo, as it rots, you've got some gas, methane and stuff being created. So they had to have the gases coming out to prevent explosions, if anything. And of course, they did not want them on street level, because of course you didn't want to smell it. So that's why you have those very tall stink pipes. Some people kind of collect them. You've got those websites online with stink pipes collectors. Well, Natasha, they do my annual check for free. Then if I have anything to get done, I'll have to pay. I'll have to pay for the dental work, but far less than I would in the UK. And they also have a studio in London anyway. So if I cannot fly, I can go and see the Hungarians in London. But in London, it's more expensive because obviously they have to deal with all the prices in the country. Anyway, let's stop dentist talk. Let's talk about this beautiful letterbox. It's not very straight, but can you see the cipher on this one? So that's Edward VII. So that's Queen Victoria's son. His name was actually Albert, because when they access the throne, they choose their names. It doesn't have to be their first names. Elizabeth II, it was her actual first name, but it doesn't have to be. Her dad, George VI, was also called Albert. So very often they go with their second or third names. Anyway, this is a beautiful terrace of, again, Georgian housing. As soon as we leave this street, really, we'll end up in Hammersmith. So we're no longer in Chiswick. That's quite typical of Georgian houses, because you've got the little floor basement flat, those little coal cover. So for those of you that don't know, those were to deliver the coal. They have a little storage space under the pavement here. So if you didn't want to get your house dirty, you'd get the coal dropped in there. And very often, not always the case, but often the Georgian buildings, they have those kind of like a little window above the door. And again, another very Georgian thing, this is a boot scraper. So if you come down from your horse with your dirty boots, you can scrap them down here. So they're quite typical. And we had quite a few famous people that lived here, a few blue plaques. Sir Alan Herbert. He was a writer on a comic, but he also was a member of parliament. He was very influential in the newly developed divorce laws. He made divorce a little bit easier. And he was also known for popularizing the game of Skittles, that pub game. Don't ask me how it works, it's far too British for me. But he played a lot of Skittles at the pub down there, the Black Lion. That's where we're heading to next for a little ghostly murder story. But for now, let me show you the other blue plaques. We've got two more. The next one is right here. That should be Walker. So this is Sir Emery Walker. He was a typographer. And he actually, you know what, he had his own font that he had designed himself. And his business partner, as they stopped working together, his business partner actually he collected all of the fonts, so the metal pieces, from the typing machine. And every night he'd carry them. They were very heavy. He took over a ton in total, and he would dump them over the Hammersmith Bridge into the river. They were only found 100 years later. The font has been recovered since, but yeah, he really did not want the font to be used by anybody else. Imagine the little gentleman every night carrying bags and bags of metal to dump into the river. Now this is Edward Johnston. He is very much well known because of the typography of the, he's the one that did the font for the Underground, the London Underground. Let me show you his font. So that's the, we don't really see it anymore. The London Underground, they don't really use it anymore, but that was the font. Now, let me remove the picture over here. Right, now, this is the Black Lion pub. Lovely pub, but there's a dark story. 1803, there was a ghost in Hammersmith. Ladies were terrorized. Ladies didn't want to come out anymore. It was said that there was a pregnant lady that had seen the ghost, and she was so frightened that she died. Oh, thanks ever so much, Linda. And there were actually quite a few eyewitnesses that saw the ghost all around Hammersmith. So there was a ghost, there's no question about it. The question is, what was he? Because some of the witness accounts, they stated that the ghost was not very convincing, let's say. Some people stated that they had seen him running with it looked like someone with a white sheet over his head. And with shoes and stuff running off. So some people believed it very badly and some people didn't. But there was definitely a ghost around here. And at the time, so we are before the Metropolitan Police and all that. So you only had the night watch and, in terms of the authorities, it wasn't like today. And one day, there's a local gentleman that decided he was gonna deal with it. He grabbed his gun. He had a few too many drinks, Dutch courage, His name was Francis Smith. So one night he grabbed his drink, he had a few shots, and then Ghostbusters. He decided to come and eliminate the ghost. He was gonna find it. And that night, he's a bit drunk. He's walking by the pub here when he found the ghost. It was right here in front of him, a tall, white ghost. So he pointed his gun. He was like, "Who are you? What are you? Tell me now or I'll shoot you." The ghost didn't say anything. He was petrified. So the guy shot him. Sadly, it was not a ghost. It was a local man called Thomas Millwood. He was a local bricklayer. He was dressed all in white. That was the tradition at the time. The bricklayers, they were often dressed in white. His wife had told him, "Stop wearing that after work because people are gonna think you're the ghost." Thomas was taken into the pub and he died. Now, Francis Smith was in trouble because he was gonna go down for murder. And he was, when he was tried, I wouldn't want to be a jury on that one because the jury was told it is guilty or not guilty. You cannot say manslaughter because it's not an accident, is it? And at the time, if you were found guilty of murder, you'd hang. He was found guilty. But later on, he applied for a pardon with the king. That would have been 1803, George III. He was given a royal pardon. So I think he had to do a year of penal servitude. But would you believe the question of acting on mistaken beliefs was not really sorted until the 80s? I think it's 1984. There was a case in Woolwich. I think it was so there was a chap that had spotted a lady being mugged. So he had grabbed the young man and he was trying to do a citizen arrest, dragging the young man on the street. When another guy came along and he witnessed the guy being dragged, he believed the young man was being assaulted. So he attacked the other guy. And very badly injured him. And that's how because both of the guys believed they were doing a good thing, so that's how they had to make legislations against or for acting on mistaken beliefs. So yeah, that was the story of the Hammersmith ghost. Now, there was there's another very sad case that happened around here. It is the story of Jack the Stripper. Now, if you've read my tour description, you might have thought, "Oh, Jack the Stripper, that must be a typo." No, we had a serial killer in the 60s around here in Hammersmith, known as Jack the Stripper, or the Hammersmith nude murders. It was a terrible case. it's still a mystery today. We don't know who Jack the stripper was. The first victim, Anna Telford, she was found floating down the river, somewhere down there by the Hammersmith Bridge. And the second one, Irene Lockwood, she was found behind me towards the spot where we saw the Asian celebration earlier, where the same spot really, where Montague Druitt was found. Those ladies were sex workers. And really, when you read the articles in the press at the time, it really shows you that we've not changed very much since Victorian times. Those ladies, you know, they were sex workers, of course, but they were mums, sisters, daughters. And sometimes the press was not very kind to them. They were like, oh, another fun girl found dead. And, you know, it's very bad, but sometimes it does look like if for a prostitute to be killed was almost like an industrial accident. You know, you work in a factory, you might lose a finger. Well, you work as a sex worker, so you might you lose your life, you know. So people were not very kind in the 60s, so that was not that long ago, you know. Jack the stripper, that was also known as the nude, the Hammersmith nude murders, because the bodies were found nude, and very often they were missing teeth. He had taken the teeth as a little trophy, you know, as well as their items of clothing. The killer was never found. The police had done an amazing job, you know. That's another cool pub on the riverfront. The police, you know, in the 60s, they didn't have the computers yet. You know, they took all the number plates of hundreds of cars, but that was on paper, you know. They interviewed over 700 gentlemen. They had a very good police officer on the case. His name was John DeRose. He's the one that had guessed the guilt of the acid bath murderer, I think 4 years before anyone else. So he was a good police officer, but you know, they did not have much to go on. They had a suspect called Mungo Island, but it turned out since that the guy was actually in Scotland through one of the murders, and eventually the case went cold. They never found who it was. It's very sad because those ladies, a lot of them had kids, and 2 of them were actually pregnant when they were killed, sadly. So yeah, it still matters, you know. If they could find the truth today, a lot of people would still, you know, they're probably still very much hoping for clarity one day. Now, there's one good suspect that came across very recently because of a criminologist doing a documentary on the BBC. It's a suspect that wasn't suspected at the time. I'll tell you about him in a moment. For now, let me show you where we are. So this is the school of rowing on sailing. So if you've watched, I don't know, the Olympics on TV, some of the rowing winners might have trained around here. And this little interesting thing here, that's for the, you know, when they have a race, that's for the referee. I don't know if you can call it a referee, but whoever is in charge. So they climb up there to have a great view on the river to see the rowing races and stuff. Now, pretty much over here on the site of the sailing school today, that's where Catherine of Braganza used to live. So she was the poor wife of Charles II. Catherine, she's the one that's known for popularizing the tea in the country. She was from Portugal, and Portugal was already drinking a lot of tea because you know, they had done a lot of trading with Asia, and she was sadly unable to give him a child. Charles II had a lot of mistresses. We believe he had 18 illegitimate children. But he probably did love his wife to an extent, because he could have tried to divorce her on the grounds of infidelity. It has happened. I don't think it had ever happened in the UK, but some monarchies in Europe, so I think they've done it. So he could have tried that. Another letterbox here. This is George V. He doesn't need to put the fifth, because at the time of George IV, we did not have any letterboxes, or mailboxes, I should say. So yeah, Catherine, she actually outlived him for 20 years, I think. She went back to Portugal eventually, but he was with her for the rest of his life, despite having all those mistresses. And poor Catherine, she had to meet Barbara Villiers, the mistress we talked about earlier. And the king already had a child with Villiers when he married Barbara. She apparently cried a lot after meeting Barbara. Barbara, that at the time was young and very promiscuous with many men. Barbara, so the mistress, she also had an affair with the Duke of Marlborough. That's Sarah Churchill's husband. They were not married yet, but we talked about Sarah Churchill when we talked about Queen Anne, because Sarah Churchill might have been the mistress of Queen Anne. Queen Anne that might have had a couple of lesbian relationships. Anyway, that was a time of history with a lot of sexual affairs everywhere. Yes, Laurie, she lived there. So she didn't live very far from Barbara Villiers. And actually, when Catherine lived here, there was an episode of a little flood, and 2 of her servants lost their lives in the flood. But at the time, a lot of people didn't know how to swim. And on top of that, they had those big Stuart dresses, with a lot of fabric. So even if you were in only a few feet of water, it was very easy to drown with all that fabric absorbing the liquid. So sometimes you had some people, especially ladies, drowning in very, very shallow water. So that's, yeah. Anyway, there's another interesting character that once lived here. It is William Morris. William Morris was, of course, you probably know him because of the wallpaper. He was very well known for his art and craft. He was also a socialist. William Morris was really if he lived today, he'll be anti-Timuab. Because he was strongly against, we are at the time of the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and stuff. He was against all those cheaply manufactured items. He believed for society it was very, very important to buy well-produced items that the person producing them would be proud of their work, and that was better for their mental health as well, and their labor and all that. Anyway, that's where he lived. So this is William Morris' home, and it's still the same. It's literally the building in which he lived. Yeah, it would have been very distressing for her Sunday. Yeah. Well, although, at the time, pretty much any man in power had some mistresses, so it wasn't nice, but it probably wasn't that unusual. So yeah, there's a little, I think there's a little museum in the William Morris home here. The local Wetherspoons is named after him, the William Morris in Hammersmith. Now, this lovely little pub around here, it's called the Dove. That's a pub where allegedly Charles II had some dates with Nell Gwyn, another one of his many mistresses. So again, right under the nose of his poor wife, Catherine of Braganza. It's a lovely little pub, although I've never been. They don't take cash. They have a sign that says they say cashless. I try to support businesses that take cash because I don't want to live in a cashless society like Sweden. But yeah, lovely little pub. And at the back, I don't know if that belongs to the pub, but they have a lot of anti-trans propaganda down here.
I don't think there's going to be like an
This one here is referring to a case in Scotland. I think it's going through a trial now. A Scottish nurse, NHS nurse, that went to the changing room. She had her period, she was overflowing, and there was a person in there that was at the time still, they were transitioning, but they still had a beard and everything, and she stepped out saying, "Oh, I'll wait until you're done." And they went ballistic. They started crying, and then she got sacked. The person transitioning went to HR, and they kind of demanded that she changed in front of them, and it was all over the press recently. Anyway. I mentioned earlier the guy that dropped all the little type font into the river. That's him. That's Thomas James Cobden Sanderson. So he's the one that went and dropped a ton of type font into the river under the bridge. The same that were found 100 years later. Yeah, cashless is bad. Cashless is bad for everything. It's good for the banks, that's it. Because apparently, if I give you £10, you give me £10, I give you £10, you give me £10, with cash, we still have to, you or I, someone has £10. If you do that with a card, apparently, apologies, I've lost you for a sec, but we seem to be back now. This beautiful little park was not always a park. It was actually bombed through the Second World War, and they've decided not to rebuild on it. That's nice. That's lovely. Apparently, it was not only buildings. They also had a little Quakers graveyard down here. Anyway, it's very nice to have it as a park now. We're back. Perfect. Cool. So you might have missed, I was pointing out to the Hammersmith Bridge. It's the lowest bridge in London in terms of the street level. And it's from Joseph Bazalgette, the guy that's very much well-known. It got earlier than what I thought. Okay, so I was saying that, if you give me £10, I give you £10 by card. On average, after 17 transactions, we don't have anything. The bank has the £10. So, it's a lot. We're giving a lot of money to the banks, and then we complain about inflation. But yeah, so I think we should try to save the cash. Yeah, so 17 transactions later, the bank has everything, and we've got 0. It might vary depending on the cards, depending on the banks, but on average, yeah. Right, so I was telling you about the Hammersmith flyover earlier. That's the one. See the big one? So in the tunnel, just chit-chat. Yeah, no, that's insane. No worries, Emma. See you soon. Right, we're going down the tunnel. There've been, I'm pretty sure there've been some new stickers stuck down the tunnel since I last came. The pigeon. Although some of those pigeons actually look like the flying pears of YouTube tips. Oh yeah, nice. It's nice to have a bit of an illustration. And of course, a post box. And pigeons at the pub. That's a cool one as well. Right, cool. Let's go back out. So, I was telling you we do have a good suspect for the Hammersmith nude murders. It's a suspect that only came out a few years ago because of a documentary by criminologist David Wilson. You might have seen it on TV. He's always on TV. They've noticed that there was a guy that lived in the local area. I'll show you where he lived. That's where we'll finish the tour in a moment. His name was Harold Jones. Although once he came out of prison, he took a different name because he was actually a murderer. Harold had killed twice when he was a teenager himself. He was 15 years of age. In a little town in Wales called Abertillery. He was at the time, I've got a picture of him at the time actually, so that was in the, between the wars. He was a young shopkeeper and he had killed one young teenager. She came to visit his shop and he told her to go to a little warehouse down the street. He followed her, he killed her. He was actually arrested, but then he was acquitted. No one believed such a young, nice boy could have done or committed such crime. So he was acquitted, and then he killed again another little girl that actually accused him of killing his friend. And this time he was caught because they found the body in his attic. He tried to deny it, but his dad was like, listen, son, it's me or you, and it's clearly not me, so it must be you. And he went to jail. He actually admitted his crime because he was 15, and he knew that if he was trialed after 16, he could hang. So he confessed, he was jailed for 20 years. Because of the Second World War, you know, some people were released from prison to join the war effort. And apparently, before to be released, he had said he had no intention to stop killing. And after the war, so he served through the war, and then he was released, and then he took a different name, and with all the mess of the afterwar that worked, he moved on to London, he moved to Hammersmith. And in terms of geoprofiling, the Hammersmith nude murders, we only mentioned 2 earlier, but we believe there were 6 in total. The first 2 were found into the river, but after that they were found on the streets. All of them nude, all of them sex workers, and a lot of them missing teeth. Now, Harold Jones, there are some evidence that when he was young in Wales, he already had some kind of an oral fetish, because his girlfriend at the time, there's a letter from her saying she felt very uncomfortable when he asked her to spit in her mouth. So there's a link there as well in terms of the MO. And with the local, the modern geoprofilers, they were spot on. He would have lived very locally in the middle of all the murders. And we know such sadism and psychopathy, they don't usually stop for no reasons. So it's very unlikely anyway that he would have stopped killing. I mean, especially that he had said he had no desire to do so. And so that's why that's when he then potentially killed again when he lived there under a different name. There's no strong evidence against him, but a lot of those naked ladies, when they did the autopsy, they found some little micro spots of paint, like spray paint, industrial, like maybe from an automobile factory or something. So the bodies would have been stored in a little somewhere that might have been industrial. And he had worked right next to where the bodies were stored before to be disposed out. They didn't find that out at the time. They found that out only a few years ago with the documentary, because he was using yet another name. He's dead, Harold, so we can't interview him today. His daughter is still alive. His daughter, bless her, she didn't even know that her dad was a criminal at the first place. she knew that he used a fake name. She was aware of that. And she had noticed that whenever he had an argument with his mum, he would run out. He was kind of almost like afraid that he might hurt her or something. So she probably would like to have some closure as well, you know. After the documentary, if you wanted to watch it, it's called Dark Sun. I don't think it's on BBC iPlayer anymore, but it's on YouTube. After the documentary, because they came up with a bit of circumstantial evidence to show the police did agree to reopen the case. I don't know if there was any development. That was like maybe 6 years ago now. We've not heard anything since, so they probably didn't find much, you know. It's quite unlikely that after so long they'll find a lot of evidence. Yes, exactly, Dark Sun. Maybe Dark Sun on the hunt for a killer, but if you just put Dark Sun on YouTube, you should find it. Unless it's not available in the US. You know, sometimes videos are available in one country and not the other one. No worries, Samantha. Right, let me show you another building here where there was another interesting murder. It's number 22, it's this one here. So that's, I don't want to be too loud because the windows are open. When people don't know they live in a murder location, it's probably better if they don't find out on YouTube. 1959, there was a murder in there. It was the case of John O'Shea. He was an Irish guy. I'll tell you as we walk, but let me show you another interesting building. See, there's a little blue plaque on the building here. That's for an amazing couple, a fascinating story. That's Helen and William Craft. But let me tell you about the murder first, and then I'll tell you about this fascinating couple. Yeah, John O'Shea, he was from Ireland. He lived as a lodger in there. You know, it was some kind of a flat share. The landlady, she wasn't very... the landlady, she probably... Nikki, I don't. Maybe they would want to know. Maybe I should knock at the door and be like, "Hey, do you know?" But I think if I lived in a murder house, I'm not sure I'd want to know. Would you? Would you like to know? I mean, especially if you bought the house, if you're a tenant, but if you bought it, you'd probably be a bit disappointed to find out. Anyway, so John O'Shea is from Ireland. He's a labourer. Low income. He doesn't have much that excites him in his life apart from a few Guinness every so often. He used to bet on the horses, the dogs racing, I think it was. And he didn't trust the banks. He used to keep his cash with him. A lot of people knew about that. And one day his mate comes, another guy that lived around, and the guy had just won some money at the horses, at the dogs, and he was like, "Hey, Kerry." His name was not Kerry. His name was John, but he was from Kerry in Ireland. I've just won some money, and John didn't reply. So the guy pushed over the door, and he found his mate all white and cold. He had been attacked. He had been murdered. I think he was strangled on his bed. Anyway, there was an inquest. She wasn't really good at checking any of the backgrounds of the people that lived with her, and they eventually closed the case. They didn't find anything or anyone suspicious. It was probably for a robbery, because everyone kind of knew that he'd keep a lot of cash on him. And 3 years later, there's a guy that, I think his name was Hudson, that went to the press. He was a bit drunk, and he said to them, I've committed the murder. I've killed John O'Shea in 1959 at number 22 Cambridge Grove, I think it's called. And of course, the journalist went to the police. You know, what do you expect? So the guy was arrested. At first, he was still drunk, so he was like, "Yeah, I've done it." And then he told the police, "No, I've lied. I've not done it. I was at the pub. I heard about the murder, and I was just a bit drunk and a bit high, and I thought I should say it was me because then I'll be hanged." If it's true, that's extremely sad, of course. But too late, you know, and everything was coherent with his story. Everything was coherent with what the police knew about the case. So he was taken to court. He was tried, and the jury they were asked. They had to decide whether he was a murderer or a time waster. Eventually, the jury decided he was a time waster. So they believed he probably was drunk and depressed, and he probably made it up to somehow be found guilty of murder, which is mad, but yeah. Or was he the murderer? Who knows? Now, let me tell you about the blue plaque. So the couple, I'll show you the plaque because we couldn't see much from there. So that was the house, so right next to the murder house, where an amazing couple lived at, Ellen and William Craft. They were enslaved people in Georgia at the beginning of the 19th century. They worked in a plantation. Apparently, compared to some other plantations, they were not treated too badly. Well, I mean, Ellen, she was the daughter of an enslaved lady, but her father was the owner of the plantation. So, I mean, don't tell me that's being treated nicely, but anyway. So her mom was probably abused, but Helen apparently was rather white. She was mixed race, of course, but she looked very white apparently, and she married William in the plantation. So as enslaved people, they did not want to have kids though, because they knew, of course, their kids would be enslaved, and so they married, but they didn't want to have kids. And some of in the plantations that the owners were fairly nice. I don't want to say nice because obviously that's not nice, but they were not too bad. Sorry to hear about Lynn. That's very sad, Pisas. Anyway, so let's not drop the mood down too much. It's just very sad. Anyway, so yeah, they escaped. At the time, sometimes for Christmas, enslaved people would be given a day or two off. And what they decided to do, that was a mad plan. It's amazing that it worked. They decided to dress Ellen as a man, a white man. So not only did she have to pass as white, but she had to pass as a man. And then she would travel with him, William, pretending he was their slave, her slave, but she was pretending to be a man. And he would, usually you wouldn't really travel with slaves like that anyway, but that, would you believe that worked? Now, none of them knew how to write. And you know, they took a lot of ferries, trains, so you had some checkpoints when they had to sign and stuff. And the brilliant idea they had is that they put her in some kind of a sleeve, so her right arm was injured. So she would ask people, "Oh, can you sign for me? I can't write." Sometimes she even pretended to be deaf, so she wouldn't have to go on too long conversations, because obviously I'm guessing her voice was not very deep. But would you believe that worked? They managed to go all the way up to Philadelphia, There was a state with a lot of abolitionists and stuff. They lived in there for a while, but then there was an act of parliament that claimed that the enslaved people that had escaped could be chased and brought back. So that's when they had to leave Pennsylvania to come down to London. So they came down here to Hammersmith, to the house we've seen a moment ago, where they learned how to write, both of them. So William actually wrote the story of their escape. And they lived here for many years. Then eventually, when slavery was completely abolished all across the United States, they went back to Boston. I think they didn't have the best time, though. They did suffer a bit of discrimination and all that. But what an amazing story. They've got some descendants. There's a little movie that was made about them. I think you can find it on YouTube as well, where their great-granddaughter is introducing the movie. Anyway, that's going to be the end of the tour. I wanted to finish here to show you, well, you don't care, but I used to live down there, number 280 Road. Not for very long, just a few months ago, many moons ago now. But Harold Jones, the potential number one suspect into the Hammersmith nude murders, he lived down here. I don't want to show you the house because I'm not too sure whether it was renumbered. So I don't want to show you the house in case I'll show you the wrong one. And one of the victims, I think she would have been the fifth one. It's debatable. There was another one that might have been a seventh one. But anyway, Bridget Horara, she lived a minute and a half down this way. So, you know, in terms of the geolocation of all those murders and those ladies, he lived really right in the middle of all of it. And we know he was a killer. We know he was a sadist. We know he was a psychopath. We know that already at the age of 15, he was already killing. We know that he had some kind of an oral fascination or fetish. And we know that a lot of their teeth were removed. So he's a very good suspect, if you ask me. Now my bicycle is still here, so that's a good start. Let me show you my face again, and you let me know in the chat if you have any questions about what is the movie called? I think it's called Running 1,000 Miles to Escape or whatever. But if you just put Ellen and William Craft escape story, you'll find it. Or Ellen and William Craft escape movie, you'll find it on YouTube for sure. It's not a modern film, so it's not great quality, but yeah, cool story. Thank you very much for coming tonight, guys. It's always amazing to have you along and to have so many of you every time. And if you want to see a bit more of me, next Sunday we've got the Southwark Poisoner. So we'll go back down towards London Bridge and all that. Oh, thank you, Sandrine. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you, Mark. And yeah, we'll talk about George Chapman, another Jack the Ripper suspect, potentially a bit better than Montague Druitt, if you ask me. But again, there are many potential suspects, because Chapman was a murderer for sure. So I'll tell you about his other murders. So that's next Sunday. And the week after, I think it's on the Wednesday or Thursday, I think, we're going to Stockwell. So that's a new area. We've never been there together before. I've not done a live in Stockwell before. So that'll be something to look forward to. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get a notification to make sure you don't miss the live. Because of course you can watch the replays, but it's much more fun to be there in the chat. And if any of you were completely new to me, if you've made it that far into the video, you might want to consider subscribing. So if you wanna make sure you don't miss on the live next time, you might wanna subscribe and hit the notification so you can be notified when I go live. Right, thank you guys. Have a great evening, a great morning, a great lunch, a great night, whatever time it is for you, wherever you are in the world. And I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. And thanks for all your tips as well. That's greatly, greatly appreciated. Is that where the swans used to be? Which swans, Laurie? Do you mean by the London Bridge? I'm not sure which swans, because we do have swans in the river as well, so there will be some by London Bridge. Pub crawls. Well, there'll be quite a few pubs in London Bridge. Cool. Bye, Sarah. Bye, Nikki. And yeah, thank you, Nikki. If any of you want to help, if you want to give it a like or give it even a comment, you know, dropping a comment after the live on the video itself, it always helps with the algorithms. Was waiting for the swans, but you might be going by now. Anyway, you can always ask me later about the swans. Maybe it wasn't for me. It might have been something in the chat. Cool. Have a good one, guys. Have a good evening or good whatever. And I'll see you soon. Bye bye.